get straight into it. Let's not bother with any of that time, because it's obviously the session before lunch. So the sooner we get to lunch, the sooner we get to the afternoon sessions, the sooner we get to the alcohol at the end of the day. So let's keep it all moving through. So I like Slido. I use Slido a lot. So there's going to be a number of questions and things coming up asking for multiple choice. So please keep your phones handy. Scan the QR code that's on there. I'm going to go straight into the question so you can see the Slido number as well if you want to do it via that method. So, yes, we did something on an Apple phone. Yes, I use an Apple phone, so it works fine on that phone.
No, it's on Android. Well, it's me.
Oh, okay.
It's an Android.
I don't have any comments.
But there's a Wi-Fi code on the tables outside. It's probably one of the here. So there we go.
Sorry, can I clarify the question? Is this for individual licenses or for overall licenses?
However you want to interpret it, it's a general question, just to get a read of the room of how often are you actually doing reviews of the software license from a broader perspective, that you've got enough compliance in place within your organization. So remember, the topic we're talking about here is using the perils of using AI for software license compliance and relying upon it. So we've got a few of the responses coming in, their annual reviews, monthly reviews. I suppose the other one that's missing off the bottom there is, what's a license review? Yeah, there is quite a few organisations that sit in that boat from time to time. And so, yeah, we can see. Not surprised really. You know, my background is that I am a consultant. I've worked with a number of people in the room here, and yeah, this is where most companies sit. You know, they sit in this idea of let's review every year and see where we are. You know, we talked about it in the last session. You know, ITAM is very much a risk statement. It's not a I'm black and white. I am either compliant or not compliant. I'll look at it and go, you know what, SAP, they're a big nasty company. They come with their legal. They will audit me. That'll cost me a lot of money. Or I look at it and go, yeah, that's Bob's development, and he's done a little bit of auditing of things. I'm not really going to be too worried about that. I worked with a client recently. They asked me to check a German engineering piece of software that they had. Said, don't worry, there is no audit clause in that license agreement. You're fine. That's great. We feed the information into SAP.
How does
Right. Okay. So you now have that ability of third-party access in SAP. Now you need to be worried. It's not that little engineering software that's the problem. It's the data end that you're putting it all into that's the problem.
How does that align with cloud though? Because certain cloud providers will sell you a license included when you buy the cloud. So you never need to review the software license because you go up to say Amazon and go, I want one Redshift, please. And they sell the license with Redshift.
Absolutely. And that is something that your procurement and your legal teams actually do need to actually address that and say, actually, is Amazon Marketplace or AWS Marketplace and all of these marketplaces, are they the right places for me to be buying software? Because that software may not actually be AWS, it could be a third party, therefore there is all sorts of issues that come around that. And it might not be a licensing issue, it might be a fair use and correct use policy. So I think it was Azure or Azure, depending which part of the world you're from. They had a bit in their rights to use that you can't use their services for gambling. I was working with a betting organization and they were using their services on the back of there. I said, technically you're not in breach of the license, but you are in breach of the use conditions of the services. So it's a very grey area that places need to get more involved with.
How would you, if it were me and I was saying, right, for example, you've gone to Azure and you've bought Active Directory because the license is included. Well, your organization then would not need to review their license because the license is included with Azure. So how would I answer that question?
It's included, but it's still the terms that you're going to be held to. And that's why your procurement strategy and your commercial strategies need to take these things into account.
And stop using Azure too. Move to a different database. You can't carry on using Active Directory.
Yeah, absolutely. So knowing the things that all this interaction, just one simple question. This was just to get the read of the room, so I'm really happy. So
just one small question. It's continuous, because it seems to me that exception reporting of licensing, once you've done your audit, you could then have a piece of software that overnight or some quiet time tells you about new licenses that have arrived.
That's like an AI piece of software, maybe.
Yeah.
Exactly where we're going, David. So keep that in mind as we talk through here. So yeah, it's a very dynamic landscape that's out there these days, isn't it? You know, lots and lots of things happening. You know, we've just seen the level of conversation we've just got out of the room there. You know, in this session today, we're going to look at AI and software licensing and touch into cloud licensing and how that all sits together as well. So I'm going to jump into this. For those that don't know me, Stuart Dickin, I am a principal consultant with Beam Digital. I'm also a committee member here with BCS Special Interest Group for Service Management and IT Asset Management. And lots of people have known me for a long, long time because I'm 25 years of doing this now. This is scary. Quarter of a century talking about this, going in loops and circles, it also feels to be. So what we're talking about here, we're talking about this dual challenge. You know, anybody ever tried to play chess against yourself? You know, it's almost that impossible thing, isn't it? Of you want to have license compliance, you want to make sure you've got enough licenses in place. But at the same time, you want to optimize it. And this is becoming more and more key as we talk about cloud software. You know, we've had all of this software that's been bought under the pandemic. You know, I know people are still trying to get away from that conversation as much as possible, but the amount of software that was bought, your WebEx, your Zooms, and all of that lot, and how many of them are still sat in organizations where they've got thousands upon thousands of licenses that are not being utilized. And that's been left there because there isn't the processes in place to make sure that they are being used. It's not in WebEx interest or Zoom's interest to come along and go, hey, did you know you've not got 5,000 licenses you haven't used this month? I'll drop your bill for you. You don't need to worry about it. Yeah, that's the way that all the tool providers are now coming up. You know, we've all seen them, haven't we? Those tool providers that are out there saying, I've got a tool that's going to optimize all of your software within your organization. But then they're all segmented and in their little silos. I see so much conversation around this, around Office 365 as an example. Office 365, great. But you find me any organization that is 100% Office 365, they will still have on-premise Office requirements within their organization. So when you're trying to do those optimization numbers, and I've done this myself, I have been involved with the creation of a 365 optimization tool. You write your algorithms to analyze this, but then it forgets that actually, you know, this computer is on the factory floor. There is 500 people that will potentially use this just to go and check an Excel spreadsheet or something like that. So this is the challenge that we're trying to do, is make sure that we are compliant, but also that we are not overspending. So I'm going to ask another question again, straight into another one now. So what concerns you the most about integration with AI? Specifically, again, we're talking about and license management side of things. So I'm hoping one of my esteemed colleagues was going to be here from Licenseware, because I know they've just done this. They've launched an AI license management tool, and I was going to see how Will and the guys were thinking on that, but Will's not managed to attend. So we'll just talk about him in his absence instead. It's all the tool's fault. Right, so we've got some interesting ones coming in. Ethical considerations, that's a great one, isn't it? Yeah. What's ethical about software licensing? I think we had that conversation during the fonts piece of going, oh, that's not right, is it? But yeah, we're coming some stuff in here. So misrepresentation, we've just been having a conversation in the room prior to this session. And I think that was a lot of what was coming out of there is, if you've not got the data sets there to understand it, how does that actually come through? Does anybody want to make comment, observation on one of their responses here? You want to expand? Go on, Anto.
For me, it's the same as I mentioned in the session earlier, as relying on a licensing tool. How do you know that what is being captured in there is actually the reality? And it's, how do you challenge that? So you still need to have that knowledge to be able to verify that whatever you're seeing is actually accurate. So that's my major concern, the misinterpretations that can arise.
Is that an AI concern or is that a process concern, a people concern, a technology concern?
I think that, well, technology, but I would put AI under the technology umbrella.
Okay. Cool. Anybody else?
To add to that, it's a lot harder to delve into the data and really check whether something is a misinterpretation than if you've got a traditional licensing tool.
Absolutely. So if you think a lot of these, and I'm just going to refer to AI tools in general, you know, a lot of them are black box technology. You know, they are public records, information that you don't control what is the underlying source of it. So when they're trained against random bits of information, you don't know how well that has been validated. We've seen it in the press with people coming out and going, oh, look, I wrote my dissertation with it and all the references it were wrong and made up. I go, well, don't use it to write your dissertation. You know, it's not a hard sort of question here. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's the black box mentality. You don't know how it's getting to those points. Now, I can't remember who mentioned it before. I think it was in the startup keynote session. But there's also the learning to prompt the right questions out of these things so that when you do use them, you can say, hey, and explain how you've got to this answer. I've tried that and still half the time, I have no idea what the hell it's actually on about. So Josh.
I was going to say, my concern about integrating AI into the software license management is broader than just ethical considerations, but it can't interpret natural language. It is getting a lot better at it, but it can't interpret natural language or edge cases all that well. So if you look at certain vendors, for example, like I know Microsoft do this and Oracle do this, they have specific licenses for like educational establishments that basically give all their product sets away for free or really reduced, you know, amounts of time. And it's great if you have a model for that, but if you just run it on an estate, say you go to a university and say how much of my product is out of compliance, for example, yeah, you'll probably turn around and go, well, the standard Microsoft license says thou shalt pay 50p per cloud instance or whatever it is. You have a license bill of 3 million, and that affects people. And that affects people in a different way. And if people then turn around and get depression or have to go to their doctor and take time off work because a computer has said, well, you've got a £3 million bill and there's no way that they can cover that shortfall, and they start worrying about their job, that's a concern for me. Whereas, don't get me wrong, it's great for the AI to flag it up and go, there's this potential bill here. But I also think it's software vendors' job to turn around and have pragmatic conversations, because nobody wants to go to Oracle's, Microsoft's, whomever else's of the world and go, look, our tool has told us we've got a £4 million bill. Have we got a £4 million bill? You know, is it like a false positive? Because they think they're throwing themselves to the wolves. Whereas actually, if you talk to a nice licensed person, they'll go, you know, you haven't got a bill. It's just representation.
So is anybody else worried about, you know, say uploading a contract and having AI to sort of say, you know, can you tell me the key things around this contract? And actually you've just handed over something that's quite confidential to business.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Depends whether it's your own model, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you've gone that far, then you know there's a reason you want that sovereignty. But otherwise, you've always got to be concerned.
I suspect actually, Marilyn, I ride in thinking that's something you'll discuss later on.
I will.
Actually, types it out there. Make sure.
That being said, though, there are cloud providers who have government clouds that still use AI technology,
Yeah.
but the AI technology is specifically managed. So
Let's wait till Marilyn addresses it.
And it comes back to you having the, you know, the
Conscious of time.
previous stuff of policy and process. You've got to have those right protections in place to make sure your people are using AI in the correct manner.
I was just going to go back to this question, you know, where it says what concerns you most about the AI software license management. I keep on trying to simplify things for myself. What is the problem we're trying to solve? Is it that the existing software isn't accurate, or people talk about AI, but what's the business case? What's the use case?
Absolutely. You know, it's why are you using software license management to start with? You know, what are you trying to achieve? You know, we talked previously about whether it's governance, whether it's control. It's all those different things, and you need to make sure that you understand as a business what you're trying to achieve about this. You know, go back to that old phrase, you know, a fool with a tool is still a fool. You know, and it's the same, you know, a fool with AI is still a fool.
Sorry, one more ethical consideration. Usually licenses are connected to individuals, and then you're loading a lot of individual data into tools which might be black boxes, and that's GDPR concerns as well.
Absolutely. Any sort of data that is going up there that has potential of personal information needs to be strongly managed. Right, so it's great. That was pretty much my introduction, and we stretched that out for a good 15 minutes. Right, so power of artificial intelligence has begun to revolutionize the business approach to software licensing. I took that somewhere from online of all of these organizations that are coming up and going, right, trust the AI. AI is going to make your life easier. It's that silver bullet that we're all being sold by the salesperson. It will sort everything out. Well, what's it going to do? It's going to go through, it's going to scan, it's going to identify software across vast enterprises. And here's the bit that AI is actually improving, is that consolidating of that information, bringing that together and processing in a quick time, because inventory of vast estates, we've been doing that for years and years and years. We've just not been very good at spotting the patterns in that data and bringing it all together. And that's the next point there, is the patterns. AI can detect the patterns when in the vast amounts of data we're talking about an awful lot quicker than what we can by manual process. I'm a fan of an Excel spreadsheet like everybody, but the amount of time that it takes me to actually validate and go through, and then you find out that you put a function wrong somewhere in the Excel spreadsheet and it passes it all through it. AI is good for that, but also, as we've said, you need to make sure that there is that human interaction in place to actually validate it. And where it's not a black box, make sure that you are constantly optimizing those data sets that it's using and the algorithms that it's using. And then finally is the future, predicting the future within software licensing. Antonella, you and I, we spent many a time in New Jersey in various meetings and talked about this with the wider group when we were both at SHI. And it's that whole understanding of where is your funding going? I've got 500 office licenses today. How many am I likely to have tomorrow? I used to work with a client who was in the retail space, predominantly most of their business is around Christmas. There is lots of seasonal stuff. So their usage really ramped up through November through January and then dropped off for the rest of the year. This is where AI can start to see those patterns and understand this is what we think the future may look like for your business. Personally, I would never make a business decision solely on what comes out of these predictions, but it will give me the guidance and the pointing stick to say, hey, Stuart, go and have a look at what happens in December, because it seems to be quite reasonable that it's going to go up then.
Won't AI just replicate the past? So if you have a fundamental change, for instance, going to pay-per-use software rather than licensed software, AI is not going to predict past that need, possibly.
It depends on your AI system, because obviously, depending what algorithms you have coded into there and what data sets you're given. So yes, at essence, it is looking at previous history, but based on previous history, this is what I think
Well, all
may happen.
ChatGPT does is to predict the next word in the sequence.
Yes, yeah.
And, so if they start changing the rules of language, it stops working.
Yeah. And remember, when I'm talking about AI here, I'm talking about this in the wider concept. ChatGPT, excuse the phrasing, but it's fundamentally the town drunk shouting in the corner. That's what it's doing. And if you listen to the town drunk, okay, one time in a million, they're going to be right. There were aliens on the village green, but most of the time they're going to be wrong. And this comes into it. Cloud is absolutely the new norm. We've talked about cloud subscriptions around here, and it's rapidly changing all of the time. All of the information that is out there, all the terms and conditions are changing. And we see it constantly that we need to actually make sure that we are dynamic enough and that we can change with the requirements that are in there. We talked about data set availability. Anybody that's tried to optimize their usage of 365, Salesforce, or any of these things, you can get certain bits of data, but the publishers don't surface all of the data that you need to make those right decisions. So AI is only ever going to be as good as the data that's made available to it. Yeah, so back to another question. So what do you see as the biggest advantage? Because we've talked about a lot of the concerns and the issues, but why would you actually want to use AI within your software licensing?
Is 24/7 monitoring while people are answering. AI, in what way is that AI as opposed to automation?
Because you need sleep. AI doesn't.
But I guess it comes, to the difference between automation and AI, doesn't it?
True, and to a degree, automation is like, the stepping stones of AI. If you write a rule that says this is what you need to do, and then you leave that rule to run on its own, it just hasn't got that ability to enhance itself and improve.
Right.
Liking the responses around the efficiency and speed. Yeah, absolutely. It is going to be that ability to do things so much quicker than some of the things that we have seen today. Interesting one there, cost saving. I'm not quite sure on whether it is going to be cost saving. If we pick up on some of the conversations that people have been having about potential of things being taxed in the future around these areas, the sustainability, we've just got to look at the data warehouses that these things are built upon. There's a lot of energy being used to run those data warehouses. We can't dump them all in sealed pods off the coast of Scotland to keep them cool and things. The other one was a swimming pool, wasn't it? A local council was using its data centre to heat its local swimming pool. Lots of different ways we can use this, but yeah, cost saving. I'm not convinced, long term at least, that is an actual way there. What was my typo there? Predictive capabilities is obviously where it was going, and some people have worked out.
Nice irony there, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's interesting to see where people are going with that. So start to talk about some of these areas now. First point there, misrepresentation. We talked about it within the questions around there. Artificial intelligence systems are only going to be as advanced as the programming that sits behind them. We've got complex license terms that come with absolutely nuances of information. How do I know that a computer is used for training purposes only and therefore exempt from its licensing things? Digitally available within our environment. So people are going to still have to have this manual interaction. So those nuances really do need to be done. Constant changes as well. We see that all of the time, don't we? I remember one year working through Oracle stuff, and there was over 370 changes to Oracle licensing terms in a year. It's like, that's more than one a day. And it's keeping on top of it. And also the fact that the licensing terms apply at the point when you buy it. So it's very key that you see lots of Oracle being one of the big culprits for this. If they put hyperlinks within their documents. So if you look at that when you bought it in 2003 and then look at it today, even though you've been paying all of your subscriptions and everything and maintenance up to this point, that hyperlink will go to today's licensing terms, not the 2003 licensing terms. So you've got to be really careful with all of that type of information, because that's what the AI is going to be looking at. It's going to be pointing out the data links that it's got. So it all needs to be in the right context. Incomplete data, it's definitely the subject a lot of people are raised around this. AI is only going to be as good as the data that it's trained upon. They need to make sure that those data sources are true and valid sources. We all do it. We all do our basic Google searches. We go and say, where do I find this information? And you'll find something that may be written by bobblog.com or something like that. And it tells me this is how you do the licensing. And then you found Sarah's blog.com and she says it's done a different way. It's who's actually writing these, because most of the time it comes down to interpretation. I kid you not, my brother used to be one of those horrible people. He sold Microsoft Enterprise agreements. He worked at Microsoft. And we used to joke and go, my job is to make people get the most out of these agreements and say when an enterprise agreement is actually wrong. But he used to come to me as the subject matter expert and say, how does this work in this area? You go, hold on, you're selling this stuff and you don't even know how it's supposed to be used. Yeah, it just shows that the data and where that data source comes from is very key to getting these things right. Dynamics and real changes, these are obviously the areas that we've just been talking about there. Over reliance, and this was the bit of my presentation where I was sat in the last conversation going, they're taking all my content. This is what we were just talking about in the room here. And it is that, we've seen it so often that people are just relying on what's in front of them. Antonella, you spoke about testing people to see whether they actually understood how to generate an ELP. It's exactly what we used to do, wasn't it? It was someone come in for an interview, they say, yeah, I know Snow, I know USU, I know all of this. You go, yeah, but can you produce a license compliance position without the tooling? Here's the data, go work it out. And I'm sad to say most people can't, they just rely on what the tools come out. So if we get into that same position with AI, it becomes more and more dangerous. The fact that it's using external data sources that are outside of your control, it's using data sources that are not potentially the publishers. And then you've got the question of where does that liability come in? If you've then got license compliance position of £50 million or whatever, and say, right, who's at fault here if that information is wrong? Is it the AI? Is it the publisher for not training the AI properly? Is it yourself for relying on it? There's lots of areas to go out. Anto, I saw your hand go up.
I just wanted to say that for me, this slide, summarizes my view. If you would be to replace AI in that title, you could easily say risk of using a license management tool or a sample. It's identical. So again, AI, I think it's obviously a tool to help. You still need to know how to do things without relying on it. But then in order to use it properly and catch when it's not serving you justice.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Antonella. And I'll come to you in a moment, David. And you're right, you can just say this is the risks of IT asset management, software license management, anything where you are doing governance. These are the risks that sit there. We're not changing the risks. We are just having a different view at it. David.
I'm just wondering, the risk you're missing there is people actually hacking into the training databases and corrupting the data source. Produce the result they want.
Absolutely. It's not quite this slide, but in one or two slides, I think that's straight to there, David. Adaptability, we've got to make sure that everything is actually done. It's the delays in the AI training. You don't know because you are dealing with a black box. We'll keep coming back to that term. You don't know when it's getting trained. So when Microsoft issues their monthly updates on the PER, how quickly does the system understand that? How quickly can it reflect those changes? The complexities we've spoken about, security, and absolutely middle there for you, malicious actors, absolutely spot on. You've then put something again that is outside of your perimeter that you don't have full control of, that somebody could get in there. Hopefully these days less and less on that, but when those breaches do happen, they have a much, much larger impact because people have spent a lot of time and effort to get to those things. We mentioned in the room as well about public data. I've got a contract for stuartdicking.com and I put it into the system, and suddenly all of my terms are now within a data learning set. Okay, not a problem because I'm just my one-arm band, but if I am, Bank of England, and I put my terms and conditions that I've got in there, it could be a real issue for them. And more than likely, their terms probably have a non-disclosure in there that they can't share them out anyway. So comes back to that whole thing of making sure you have policy and procedure of what goes into data AI questioning. Again, another point we picked up earlier, AI bias. The system is always going to say, this is what I think based on black and white numbers. Josh, you mentioned it there. It comes into that ethical bit of, yes, I should kill that thing there, license-wise, and say that license is no longer needed. But actually, we were using that for the philosophical work that we do within our business. That's not our primary business, but it's something that the owner likes to do or something. There's all these different nuances that come into it that we need to work about. Transparency, as we talked about, the black box and the financial impact, depending what conditions you have given that AI to work to, it's either going to look to optimize it at the most efficient rate, or it's going to say, hey, actually, you've said this is what I want to be doing. So there is going to be a lot of costs involved with getting these nuances correct and balancing it out.
Isn't there also a risk when you say of AI biases? Obviously, the AI itself is biased, but people are biased towards AI. So
Yes,
people could
absolutely.
turn around and be like, I don't want to use the system because it uses AI. And I think that then means vendors who sell this stuff try and, in inverted commas, hide it, and they don't make it aware, and then that further alienates people. So it's a vicious cycle sometimes.
Absolutely, and we see it in retail space. We've spoken about Sainsbury's today, so and I noticed this on a Sainsbury's store as I was coming into the office today. Okay, we've gone from right. Your corner shop was Joe behind the desk. He would get you the item, bring you to the till, and sort it all out. Then we went to self-serve, as a supermarket traditionally is, and you'll take off the shelf and take it to Joe. Then we've decided, actually, we don't need Joe anymore. We're going to have some self-service tills. You're going to go and scan everything out yourself. We've now got to, we're not even going to have the tills anymore. We're just going to scan you as you're walking around the shop, and you walk in and walk out and never interacted with a person or a machine. And it's that same evolution that's happening with AI. It's slowly been embedded in various different things, and soon it won't be talking about AI. It'll just be the way things are. So benefits, we've spoken around a lot of this already. So efficiencies, AI speed, this is not anything that we can actually challenge and push back against. It does allow us to do work a lot faster when it comes to processing patterns, processing information. That's going to be there. But again, say that is automation rather than AI. But we'll see where that leads us to. Proactive management, this allows us to use that proactive predictive analysis that we were talking about. What do we think is going to happen in the future? My days as a SAM manager and as an ITAM manager, whenever people would talk to me, it's going, we're out of compliance. How do we solve the problem that was occurred 3 months ago, 6 months ago, whatever it is? They don't talk about how do we make sure that we are compliant in 6 months' time? How do we understand what the demand is going to be in 6 months? Now, luckily, I think that is improving in the business world a little bit better these days, but still a very rare question of what does predictive demand look like software license. Continuous oversight, and as I was saying with Kylie there, the fact that the fact that we need sleep, systems don't need sleep, so that can be analysing 24/7 and bringing that information to us for when we wake up.
Can you use AI to manage AI, do you think? If you apply, given the problems with AI, can you turn AI to look for these in the...
To a degree, so if you look at some of the, I'm going to use it, and looking around the room here, there's an age level up, but I'm going to go TikTok. So, you see some of these TikTok videos where people are doing things like that, of going, right, chat GPT, give me the input to describe into an image creator, or take an image and then put it into chat GPT and say, describe this image and things like that. So to a degree, that's starting. Cost efficiencies, when it comes to actually analysing whether I'm using 365 correctly or Salesforce or whatever it may be, it's going to have a lot more speed to be able to do all of that and give good information.
There's a scope thing on cost efficiency, because the cost to the world might be very high, but the cost to your firm might be very low.
It's absolutely, and I suppose that drops us back to our ethical risk, doesn't it? Going, but I'm going to make lots of money, but I'm going to burn a rainforest to do it. So it's definitely an area of thought. Data-driven insights, and again, this is coming back to Anto, what you were saying of going, you can take the word AI off that and going, it's exactly the same. If you haven't got the data to drive those insights, it's not going to be very good. But if you've got that data, you can manually process it as well. It doesn't have to be done through AI. It's just going to take a good chunk of time more. And then integration, we work very closely, ITAM, ITSM, we have lots of systems that talk to one another, use lots of data, what we can start doing is using AI to look for those patterns in the data and say, hey, look, this data set for ITSM has all of this stuff that you want in ITAM. ITAM, you have all of this data that ITSM want, or cybersecurity, or finance, or whoever, and start to bring all of that together. So as I start to close this out now, because Richard told me I've got 10 minutes, I've had 10 minutes. Quickly jump on then, I will go through it very quickly. What's the one word that makes you think of AI and licensing now? Chaos. Absolutely. Exciting. So I'm missing Rory with his pitchfork that he promised Kylie. Kylie, Rory's not a big fan of AI. He put a post on LinkedIn a while ago saying that he'd be there with his pitchfork. Automation future and unpredictable. That's good. That's good. I think I would back to our keynote speaker. You know, there's job roles and things that didn't exist a couple of years ago. So it's definitely something changing. Anybody seen the new film Creator? Yeah, a few nodding heads. You know, that's pretty much that. They're saying the next evolution of man is AI. So that's the background of that story. But no, all good stuff. So what's my view? You know, it's collaboration. You know, we cannot hand everything over to the computers and say, hey, you do all of this. It still needs us to validate it, put some governance and controls in there. So in conclusion, you know, it's an integral role of AI and compliance and optimization, especially in the cloud. It's coming with, there's no getting away from it, guys. You know, it is very much where we're going. It's doing a lot better than the last, we call buzz, where everyone said blockchain. Blockchain is going to be the future of IT asset management. That's disappeared, or at least gone quiet for a while. Let's see how AI does. And it's about recognizing risk and addressing them proactively, and just work together, really. And that's Richard's slide for later. So yeah, that's the end of my structure stuff. So